Okay, are we?
Yeah, but they know you're the big kahuna.
Are we there? Excuse me. Are we there? Thank you very much. Thank you for all being here today on time. And I'd like to call this Joint Shared Services Committee meeting to call to order. I call the meeting to order for today. We are at November the 16th, 2023. I will ask for an adoption of the agenda that has been presented to us, and this is the open agenda. Moved by Councilor Siemens. I'm Councilor Gibson, seconded by Councilor Davies. Thank you. All those in favor? It's a good start, aren't I? The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes from September 28th, 2023. Are there any questions? Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councilor Workington, seconded by Mayor Horn. All those in favor? Thank you very much. And the next item on the agenda, we're going to go right down to 6.1. That is the bi-monthly water report on page 6, and Jamie's going to take us through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to present the bi-monthly water report for September and October of 2023. All drinking water quality results during this reporting period met regulatory requirements. And if we could move to page 8 of the package, Appendix A, this shows the daily demands. As of September 2nd, we had our peak flow back then on 86 megaliters. Moving on to Appendix C on page 10, this shows the average monthly demands. We can see September was down considerably, 10.4% lower than the same time previous year. And at the date of the report in October, we were down 6.2% in comparison to the same time in 2022. Moving on to Appendix E and F, it's pages 12 and 13 in the report. First, we have Dixon Lake level. At the time of the report, we were showing 66%. Some good news, as of yesterday, we're actually at 82%, so we're starting to see some good recovery at Dixon. Next page, Appendix F, that's Canal Lake. At the time of the report, we were at 27%, and we're seeing some good gains there as well. We're actually at 40% as of yesterday. That does conclude the report. If there are any questions for me.
Are there any questions? Mayor Horn?
Two questions, thank you. With respect to the maximum capacity, and we were just musing on this the other day, a few of us who were here back in the early 2010s when we were talking about increasing capacity and the concern we're going to reach our 150 megaliter limit. Looking at the last few years, it looks like the closest we've come was August 2021, and then last year in September 2022, where we got roughly in that neighborhood of about 110 megaliters. So from staff's perspective, why has there been, we got very close to 150 10 years ago and was very big concern. Is it leak management? Is it water meters? Why do we see such an improvement here?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair. So I wasn't here back in 2010. Right. Mm-hmm. I do know a lot of this water savings came through the metering of the system. Beyond that, I think Rob probably has some more meaningful information for us.
You know, go ahead, Rob.
It's a great question through the mayor, Mayor Horn, or through the.
It's confusing.
It was a combination of things. Mm-hmm. And on the Abbotsford side, the AMI system and bi-monthly billing was a significant driver.
Right.
And since then, we built a building capacity on a number of things, and that's built around trying to use our resources wisely. Right. And part of it is water conservation, outdoor water usage, and tightening up on that, and looking at efficiencies along the way. And so building efficiencies and the combination of everything has reduced, our demand.
Perfect, thank you. My follow-up comment for my second question is, I just think that's a very worthwhile story for us to tell. This last year when we had the, we called it Go for Gold this year. As it happens, reached out and asked, does the programming we're doing seem to be working? And I think it's remarkable. Leak detection, metering, and water conservation education have really made a difference. So hats off, and I think where we get a chance to share that story, we absolutely should be out there doing that. The second question I had is, my understanding, if I recall correctly, is that one of our lakes never did fully recharge last year. Canal. When do we expect that is going to continue again this year, or are we optimistic that it will fully recharge this year?
Thank you again. Through the chair, I was just discussing this earlier with the chair actually. Canal is showing good signs of recovery right now. However, that is dependent upon the continuation of rain. An additional thing that we are able to do this year versus previous years, though, is we've made some modifications to one of the booster stations in Mission. It will now allow us to push Norrish water into the zone that was usually just fed by Canal.
Okay.
So we now have the ability to back Canal up, hold the lake back a bit, while we supplement with Norrish water. So if nature doesn't do it completely for us, we're feeling pretty confident we can use that booster station to get where we need to go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, that's a good comment. Any other questions? Go ahead, Mr. Gibson. Councilor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. What is watershed control program? What is that? I'm not familiar with that expression. Watershed control program in our report.
Through the chair to yourself. For our lake systems, we have to have a system in place that monitors what's going on in the watershed. The watershed being the area of influence that captures rainwater and fills the lakes or fills the creeks in the case of Norrish. So we have monitoring that goes on. We do helicopter surveys to ensure there's no activities. We don't see signs of landslide. We're also monitoring forestry activities, making sure that they're not impeding on the area as well. We have other things in place like security gates. For example, to get in Canal, everything is locked up tight. To get up into Norrish, you actually have to sign on with the city for a permit to access that upper watershed. So we try to put controls in place to limit the amount of human impact in the area where we're pulling water from.
So do we get reports about that from time to time? Is there some information that would be of interest to us to know about that? Or
There's a group within engineering who oversees that entire program. I don't know if either Rob or Lath would like to speak to some more of the details of those reports that come forward. It's not within operations.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, the watershed protection program is very important for our primary water sources. And, wherever we see things like wildfires, they're normally started by people, not necessarily started, by lightning too, but by far our exposure to risk there is people going into those watersheds. Canal is very restricted and we like to keep it that way. In fact, we've had requests to go in there, and because it's so confined and it's such an important water source, we say, no, it's not worth the risk. And just like at Dixon and Norrish Creek, we want to limit the activity going in there, especially things like partying and the other thing is, chemicals. People have a drug lab, they want to get rid of the chemicals. We don't want it in the watershed. And so it's very important to protect that and limit activity in those watersheds.
it's very encouraging, very good. Thank you very much for that
Thank you.
explanation.
Are there any other questions? Or just go ahead.
I had a question on Appendix D for the megaliters supplied from wells. There was what's actually considerably increase on the well amount. Is there a limit on this well amount, and is this a trend that's going to continue?
Thank you. Through the chair. The wells we did have to rely on the wells more significantly this year than previous years, specifically because of the lower lake levels. So we had to try to conserve the lakes while we utilized a water resource that was available, which were the wells. As far as individual well, they all have permits to take water, and there are restrictions of varying degrees. Some you can use 365 days of the year. There's other wells we can only use for half of the year. So there are limits on how much water we can withdraw. To the best of my knowledge at this time, we are not coming close within the groundwater overall as far as limits that we're allowed to take. And I see Rob has.
Go ahead, Rob.
Through the chair, just to supplement that, we rely on the wells a lot, and this year was one of the years where our aquifer levels were lower than previous years. And so we're going to keep a very close eye on that And we're going to look at providing an updated water shortage report early in next year to prepare for next year, so that if we have to make quicker decisions to move forward on it to protect the water levels, we do it much sooner.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
Just follow up.
Worthington. Yes.
Follow up on that point. Do we have an ongoing measurement of aquifer levels that is in the same kind of, importance as lake levels?
Go ahead, Rob.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
It's a very good question. I've asked, we're in the process of producing something that would be effectively comparable to our periodic reports on lake levels. The problem with our aquifer is it's not, it's apples and oranges. It's not exactly the same kind we can't just report a value from a well. There's conditions that differ across the aquifer from the confined to the unconfined area. So, but we're working on it. So we're developing a method of communicating visually the conditions of the aquifer.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I only have one. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, another question if I may. Under Appendix F, Canal Lake, at the bottom, it mentions 2012. It says this levels apply. How can it be 10 years old and still apply?
Sorry.
Just wondering how-
I just want to
Color
make sure I'm
when you
reading
do
off
it.
the
At the
same-
bottom, third line from the bottom, it mentions 2012. How can that be relevant today?
Through the chair. So most of our licenses are issued with a projection of what we're going to need well into the future. For the most part, those are asked at a level above and beyond what we think we may require. Even though it says 2012, we probably have licenses out there that are older than that. If we find that a particular license for a well, for example, if we're not getting out of a well field and we think we can get more, we will ask for that license to be reviewed and reissued. So at this point, Canal is a little unique in that it pretty much provides a small section of mission, and for the most part, that's about it. We haven't seen a whole lot of demands go up in that area, and at this point, what is coming out of Canal, we're satisfied with, and on top of that, Canal is such a finite resource, I'm not sure we really want a larger license because it's such a small amount of water.
Seems like a long time ago, but hey, that's a good
I think
explanation.
we should cut it off entirely, and then Councillor Plakas and Mr. Uni wouldn't be able to turn on their.
Thank you. I did have one comment, not
Thank you.
necessarily a question. Just, is it possible that, do you think with the water restrictions going level 3 into October, obviously we consume less water. Is that a factor, having the water restrictions go right in the end of October? And should we?
From an operations perspective, without drilling deep into the numbers, we did see reductions throughout it. At this point, I'd say we're into our average kind of winter demand, kind of mid-60s. So we're definitely back to what we normally should be, but any chance for people to water lawns, it drastically made a difference in this.
Right, just I know it was quite dry there in September and October, so it's good to see, obviously, an indication for next year, obviously, the impact it had in conserving water worked well, right? It was well done. So thank you. Okay, no other questions? We'll move on to the bi-monthly James Plant Report, page 14. And James again, Josh will do again, thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Chair. Pleased to present the bi-monthly James Plant Report for September and October of 2023. Plant met all regulatory parameters for this reporting period. And as of the date of the report, we had 5,649 tons of biosolids leaving the site. And if we could go to Appendix E on page 24, this shows the ammonia concentration. October sample result is circled. Oh, sorry, Appendix F, one more. Thank you. That shows October's sample results, and they are below the toxicity curve. We're happy with that. And if there's any other questions, that concludes the report.
Right, are there any questions for the sewer report update? No questions? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Austin. We'll now move on to item 6.3, financial statement, September 2023 from Jimmy Chan. Thank you. Page 25 here.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll be pleased to go over the WSC financial statements for the 9-month period ending September 30th of this year. Starting with the items on page 1 here, with our most recent projections here, we do expect the joint water operating activities to marginally exceed the budget for the year and joint sewer operating activities to remain within budget. Overall, joint water and sewer combined are projected to be within budget for both operating and capital. Looking at Appendix A for joint water, the joint water operations are projected to have an unfavorable variance of $27,000 for the year. We are projecting higher maintenance cost than budgeted. This is due to unexpected repairs needed throughout the year. We are expecting water conservation to come in under budget. This is partly due to not having the staff resources needed to carry out the conservation programs. Moving on to Appendix B for joint sewer operations. Joint sewer operations are projected to have a $1.35 million favorable variance for 2023. Joint sewer revenue is projected to be higher than budget by $907,000. This is partly due to unexpected disposal fee revenue in the first half of the year from a one-time customer. Also, higher industrial extra strength volumes also help contribute to these higher revenues. The general services line and expenditures are projected to be $379,000 lower than budget. This is mainly due to less spending on a monitoring program and an engineering study. On Appendix C, water capital expenditures are currently within the approved budget for 2023. A total of $2.11 million was spent at September 30th on projects with a total budget of $16.3 million. On Appendix E, sewer capital expenditures are currently within the approved budget for 2023. A total of $4.29 million was spent at September 30th on projects with a total budget of $10.7 million. And that concludes our financial update for September. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Any questions of the financial report? No questions? Go ahead, Mayor.
I'll get it started here. Just looking at, I guess, Mr. Chen, I have 3 questions. The first is just looking at the water operating and the expenditure variances. If we achieve good results in our water conservation with those vacancies, is there any possibility that the vacancies could continue, that we don't need the amount of staffing that was budgeted, or a restructuring is possible that could continue?
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Horn. When it comes to the water conservation area, what I can confidently say is that we do have a favorable variance this year due to not being able to post and hire the water conservation tech to be able to carry out those water conservation programs. But as far as going forward, I believe my colleagues in engineering might be able to better answer that question.
Through the chair, so the Water Conservation Efficiency Program, one of the many elements is our temporary seasonal water restrictions, but we have a lot of other elements to it that are intended to result in permanent reductions in waste and non-essential uses. So we have this position, which I think is in the final stages of preparation before posting for recruitment for a water conservation tech position. And that position will be involved in a number of the other essential elements to a conservation efficiency program, such as water auditing, formal loss, leakage detection and minimization programs, et cetera.
No, thank you. That's good.
So as a follow-up to that, Mr. Chair, I guess what I'm wondering is, are we expecting that position being filled will lead to further conservation progress? Will we see, do we have some metric that we're hoping to achieve in terms of a further reduction in water use?
Through the chair,
Yes.
So there is an industry standard for water conservation and efficiency programs through the American Water Works Association. And we've done an initial desktop evaluation to determine where we can make further improvements and where the biggest bang for the buck would be. And so we're in the process of actually conducting a more formal audit of our program to identify those high priority elements where we can focus with new resources.
Okay, so my way of hearing that is that we're hoping that the answer to that question is yes.
The answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. My second question has to do with the revenue variances in sewer. I'm not sure if it's the same 455 and 450 Are we talking about a $905,000 favorable variance? Thank you. And do we expect the one-time customer, I'm assuming is somebody that we don't expect to see back in the future, but the other $450,000 for industrial strength, are we anticipating that that's a continuing issue, or not issue, source of revenue and potentially gonna need some accommodation because it's a high strength?
Through the chair to Mayor Horn there. So generally, when it comes to the industrial extra strength, industries are stable in their discharge volumes, but that can change depending on what they're processing and how much of it. Now, and also, it's even though we're seeing favorable revenues this year so far, my understanding is that that's not something that we can count on going forward, especially when coming up with the budget there. And I believe Mr. Isaac here has.
Go ahead,
Through
Mr.
the
Bob.
chair to Mayor Horn. You know, every year, finance says, can we keep this money and build it into operations? And I say, you don't want to do that, because what you're doing is you're taking away capacity for growth. And we have a very excellent source control program that we run at the city to make sure that industries pay their fair share of operational costs related to the plant. However, that's on a temporary basis. And when I see this and I see 450,000 more, that means that they're putting more in, taking away growth that I want to save for growth. So part of our source control program will be having discussions with these to try and have these industries remove that product and dispose of it another way.
Yeah.
And save that capacity for growth at the plant.
Right.
And so I don't want to keep that money, I want to save that for growth, and if they continue to do it, we're going to have to come back to the board suggesting a rate review to include not only operational maintenance costs, but capital costs associated within the rate, so they're paying all the costs of that, which may push them into some sort of on-site treatment that they can invest in on-site in order to reduce their costs.
Right, yeah. I'm very grateful to hear that last part from Mr. Isaac in particular, because that's kind of where I'm going, is if we're expecting, I mean, we talk about growth, we usually reference residential, but I think both of our communities are really hoping to see more economic growth, employment growth, and certainly if the fee is set for the actual capital that this would likely end up consuming, I agree, it's likely to create an incentive for people to do their own on-site treatment or other processes to reduce it. So I think it's worth monitoring. Thank you for that answer, Mr. Isaac. Mr. Chan, my third question is just about the summary of expenditure variances in sewer. And that is again, we had a favorable variance there of 379. Can you give us a little bit of background on why there was less spent than budgeted on monitoring, and whether that's something that's likely to continue?
Yes, good question, through the chair. So the general services line, I believe that's the one that you're referring to, $379,000 favorable variance projected there. So when it comes to that area, there is less spending than planned on effluent and outfall monitoring programs. That contributes to about a $45,000 favorable variance. And then there are also some engineering studies that we weren't able to carry on with as well. And my understanding from looking at these is that labor has been trending lower, and also contract services has been trending under budget as well. So all those together do contribute to the favorable variance there.
Thank you. And the second part of my question was, do we think that may continue? Or is that likely to have just been the case this year? Will we see that be something that in our next year's budget we can adjust for?
When it comes to next year's budget, I believe we have budgeted to be for that area to be similar to the 2023 levels. Now, I believe the other side of the question might be speaking to, operationally, are we able to carry out those programs? And I believe one of my colleagues here, Ms. Chu, would be able to better speak to the staffing levels.
Through the chair to Mayor Horn, yes. So for the affluent monitoring program, we are just getting that started again for 3 years. So that spending, we're expecting to have that spending for next year. And as far as the engineering studies go, it's there to to look at condition assessments, and we are expecting to spend the $55,000 in next year as well.
So it'll catch up again. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. I think Councillor Davies, did you have a question about that you mentioned about James, about biogas?
No, I
Mentioned
didn't.
a question. I think,
No.
Okay. Nope. Any other questions at all? You hear any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Nope,
Go
nope.
ahead.
Uh,
Councillor Davies, before I close it up, go ahead.
Appendix D, the project for number 2 for canal. It has a 2023 budget of 500,000, but it has a planning date of 2024, Q4.
Page 31.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Sorry, this is through the chair, to Councillor Davies. That is number 2, canal.
Yes.
So 500,000 was the planning phase of Q4 2024.
So is that budget being moved out? Has there been any money spent from that budget in 2023?
When it comes to that project here,
Through the chair, we're in the process of developing a request for qualifications and a scope for proceeding with that. At this time, it will most likely start in Q1 of 2024.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chan, no other questions. We'll move now to a motion to go to closed. The recommendation that we have is that the November 16, 2023 Joint Service Committee meeting be closed public and to consider the matter related to the following sections of the community charter. 91K negotiations and discussions respecting proposed provision of municipal services that are at their preliminary stages and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. So I will ask for a motion to go to close, moved by Councilor Davies, second by Councilor Horn, Mayor Horn. All those in favor? Thank you very much. We'll wait a few minutes and then we'll go into close.